Howdy, howdy, howdy. Back for another episode of What You Readin'. I'm a professional writer of some fame. I'm comic book famous anyway. Uh, and people ask me all the time, what are you reading? When you're not writing, what are you reading? And this week, it's A Study in Terror by Ellery Queen. It's kind of unusual entry for Ellery Queen. If you don't know who Ellery Queen was, it was a shared pseudonym by writers Frederick Dene and Manfred Lee. And they were prolific mystery writers for, I believe, 50 years. They had a magazine, they had radio shows, they had a short-lived TV show, series of movies, extremely popular series of detective novels, which not only are supposedly written by Ellery Queen, but feature amateur detective Ellery Queen. So generally the stories are written in first person. Now this is an unusual entry in the Ellery Queen series because it's actually a movie tie-in book. It's a novelization of a movie, A Study in Terror. And the plot of this movie is it's if Sherlock Holmes were involved with the Jack the Ripper case. And it's part horror movie, part detective movie, all exploitation. I love this slug line. Here comes the original Caped Crusader. Gives you a clue as to when the movie was released, at the height of Batmania. Now, if you don't know about the Jack the Ripper case, in 1888, a serial killer with some really peculiar murder techniques was stalking the Whitechapel area of London, preying on prostitutes, killing and mutilating them in a way that suggested that he had some knowledge of human anatomy and some skill as a surgeon. We do not know who Jack the Ripper is. Case is never solved, but it caused a sensation worldwide. That's why, even if you're not aware of the details of the Jack the Ripper case, Jack the Ripper is synonymous with serial killer. And the case has been written about extensively over the years. There are people who devote themselves, they're called Ripperologists. Their hobby is trying to unravel the mystery. And there's a long list of suspects leading all the way up to the royal family, believe it or not. But here in this story, the filmmakers first, they want to do a Sherlock Holmes film, putting Holmes, quite rightly, same period, put him on the trail of Jack the Ripper. And it's interesting because what the writers Ellery Queen do is, comic fans are going to love this. It's a very comic booky approach. They don't simply do a novelization of the movie. They suppose that Ellery Queen, fictional detective, and Sherlock Holmes, fictional detective, live in the same shared universe. In Ellery Queen's universe, Sherlock Holmes was real. He was a real historical figure. And the writers choose, it's really interesting, quite a challenge, mad respect for what these guys accomplished here. They set up a framework, which is not in the movie, a framework of Ellery Queen in present day, in the 1960s, receives a manuscript, and it's an unpublished manuscript by Dr. John Watson, and it tells the story of Sherlock Holmes's investigation of Jack the Ripper. And so you have this sort of framing device of Ellery Queen. He's got a couple of things he's dealing with, but they're very minor. They don't take up much room in the novel. Interspersed with him reading, you're reading this unpublished manuscript along with Ellery Queen. It's a tremendous device. And the best part of it is that the writers who share the nom de plume Ellery Queen nail Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's writing style. Everything, he's just pitch perfect. I couldn't find any anachronisms in language. There's probably a little more dialogue than you're used to in a Holmes story, but for modern readers that made sense. And again, it's supposed to be an unedited manuscript, handwritten. by Dr. Watson, and they just nail the characters, the mood, the pacing, the detective procedures, the means of deduction that Holmes uses. There's little spots of humor in it. Just everything. It's just a terrific read. I can't fault it at all. It follows the plot line of the movie. The movie doesn't really go into a whole lot of detail because, 1960s, people weren't ready to see a movie showing the actual details of the Jack the Ripper case. I mean, it's horrific. This guy was a human monster, a real fiend. And most audiences, probably until they made the movie From Hell, really weren't ready for the true aspect. So there's a little bit of playing with the historical facts of the case and everything else for dramatic purposes. I'm fine and dandy with that. But and who's to say in the Sherlock Holmes universe it didn't happen that way? That's what I love about this. It plays with our expectations, and then it because it's ostensibly an Ellery Queen story, it sort of wraps up with Queen having his own ideas of who Jack the Ripper might have been, and also becoming involved with the person who he finds out gave him the manuscript, and it is a descendant of the person that Holmes deduced was the Ripper. And this descendant, a great grandchild or whatever, who's elderly now, she knows she's going to die soon, and she wants her ancestor's name cleared, and that's the task she gives to Ellery Queen. Really, these guys could have just done this movie tie-in book, and back in the 60s, early 70s, movie tie-in books were a big deal. They sold really well for the paperback companies. They were basically novelizations of screenplays, and it's all added value. It was all, I bought them and read them. If I liked the movie, I read the novels. I know it sounds weird to read a novel based on a movie, but it was big business for the paperback companies. And the Ellery Queen guys could have just phoned this in. They could have just wrote a novel based on a screenplay, but instead they wanted to bring it into Ellery Queen's world and make it something special, and they really, really did. And the movie's okay, it's okay, but I really prefer this novel. So anyway, that's it. That's what I've been reading, and I'll read more, and I'll come back and tell you about it. How about that? There's a deal for you. I mean, after all, what did it cost you? A few moments of your time. All right, I'll see all of you down the road.